Well, thanks for doing this. And,
You're so welcome.
Well, let's begin at the beginning. You're originally from New York City, is that
That
right?
is correct. I was born in New York City.
Tell me about your childhood, your parents.
Well, my parents were both born in Puerto Rico, and they came to New York about 1928. So they were they came with the earlier, what we call, the more the European. They were American citizens, so you can't really call them immigrants, of course. And my dad worked for the Department of Justice. He was in immigration and naturalization. He worked for the government. Before that, he had been in the Army, and they had 3 daughters. And I think you heard me talk about my 2 sisters. All 3 of us, as I say, ended up marrying college professors, although they weren't all college professors then. And obviously my folks put a tremendous emphasis on education and set high standards for us. So we knew that there were certain things we were expected to do, and we managed to do many of them.
Well, that was my next question. What was the environment like? Obviously, they were pushing you on for bigger and better things.
They were always pushing us for bigger and better things, and it was a good environment. Obviously, I appreciate it, especially in retrospect, because I have such a good life now. They were both very religious. We were raised in the Presbyterian Church, so a great deal of our young people's activities were really related to the church, and it was very active during that time. So that probably also had a great deal of influence on us.
What were your early interests? I know that you pursued political science, but how did you get involved in that or interested in that field?
Well, I was always interested in politics. My folks spoke about politics quite a bit, so we had a lot of political discussion at home. They were rather conservative, so they wondered how their daughters ventured away from there. But that was very interesting. It was a political home, and we were very interested in politics. I'm not even sure I knew that there was a political science major. I always thought I would go to law school, and then for a while I thought I would go into religious education. And when I went to college, Presbyterian College in East Tennessee, I declared a sociology major, but one day I went into a classroom. I had a political science as an elective, and the professor was so dynamic and so interesting that very first day of class, I went immediately to the admissions office and said, I want to change my major, and I've never looked back. It really reminds me of what one professor can do, the influence that one teacher can have on your life, your studies. It's that, that classroom experience that lets you know that something very exciting is happening, and it's happening at an intellectual level, and you want to be part of it.
No question about it. These places are more than bricks and mortar now.
Exactly. That's.
You earned your PhD at University of Kansas?
That is correct.
And what was your field in political science?
I went through. I started out in all of my major emphasis in foreign policy, international relations. Intrigued with that, and then I slowly ventured into public administration, and so I had 2 areas. And then I went, as I moved closer to public administration, then political process became part of it. I got interested in elections and so forth, but public administration became my major field.
When did you start to make the turn or the branch into academic administration?
When I had never really considered it until I started teaching it, when I started teaching public administration, because we developed an MPA program at Kansas State University, and I became very interested in administration, and there was an opening in our department, political science, head of the Department of Political Science, and I was chosen to lead the department and got very interested in administration. My husband's field was marketing. He was dean of the College of Business, so we had a lot of talk about administration at home. And I found it fascinating, and I liked being able to make changes and be involved in what really happens at a higher level. So one thing led to another. Never expected to, never aspired to be college president. That was never on my list.
Were dean at Georgia State?
That is correct, yeah. That's right,
and,
yeah.
When did you come to Sangamon State? Did you come here in another position, or were you recruited here as
No, I was recruited here as the president of Sangamon State. I came in 1991.
Okay.
And we really came here for family reasons more than anything else. Bob's folks had retired to Springfield. His mother had gone to Springfield High School, and she was beginning to have some health problems. So he was going to have to come in and out. And when I got a letter saying I'd been nominated for this presidency, we thought, maybe he was meant to be. Fate is working here, and that encouraged me to apply, because it was a little different model of school than I had experienced in the past. So it was going to be a big change.
Well, we'll speak to that, because at the time, Sangamon State University was still a relatively young institution, and it had a different kind of role from a lot of the more traditional four-year institutions.
Exactly.
Tell us what it was like.
Well, it was a little bit of a culture shock for many reasons. That, of course, I just come from a very large institution. We had 35,000 students at Georgia State. In addition, I didn't even know there were two-year institutions. So half of our students were graduate students, as you know, if you've been in Illinois. The culture was different than what I had been in before. There was a lot of tension when I came in. If you remember the history at that time, there were lawsuits against the president. There was a great deal of campus unrest. So I came into a very challenging situation.
Right, and it was, as we were saying, it's a fairly new place, and intrinsically tied into administration or the political life and political culture of the state because of its closeness and, of course, some of the academic program like the Public Affairs Reporting Program. So it's kind of an interesting place to be.
Now that was easy. That was the easy part, because I had at Kansas State, we're 80 miles from Topeka, and I had done some work with government there. That was my environment. That was natural. At Georgia State, I was 6 blocks from the state capitol, so we were in and out all the time. So one of the attractions here was, of course, going back into the political arena. And so that was very appealing. That I was used to, and that I understood, and I think that helped me, because adjusting to being in an environment where there are political sensitivities and you're dealing with political officials, I had quite a bit of experience there, so that was not a problem.
So that's a big plus.
That was a big plus.
Oh yeah. The other thing too that I'm told by Bill Schneering was you made special efforts. You took time to get out and know people in the community. You weren't just, if you will, landlocked on the campus. You really got involved in the life of Springfield.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love Springfield, and I had heard that there were tension between town and gown, and perhaps there was. But I didn't experience that. The community was very welcoming. They wanted to help me. They wanted me to succeed. So I got as involved as as time permitted, because we had things to be done on campus that were, to say the least, time-consuming themselves. But we tried to build our family life in the community. We got into, I got on the board of Urban League, things I cared about, the United Way, in our church, in the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, name it, and we were there. It was a very interesting life, because it never ended till about 10:30 at night. And there was something going on every night, and I will admit that sometimes at 5:30 I would say, oh, I don't know, I'm tired. And, or, I wish I hadn't overcommitted and so forth. When I came home at 10 o'clock, I always said, oh, I'm so glad we did this. We had such a good time. I mean, it's really a wonderful community to move. And have you noticed how many people stay here, retire here? And that's because it's just the right-sized city. You're not that far from St. Louis, and you can do all kinds of things, and you feel as if you're making a contribution to the community, which is not always possible in big cities.
That's true. You actually know people on it. You can see them, you know them out on the street, and if you're doing something, you know pretty quick, you get the feedback pretty quickly if you're doing right or wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
When we went with the University of Illinois, there were some adjustments because I had been doing my own lobbying and so forth, and so they were trying to explain how the system worked, and I'd laugh because I knew Larry Baumke. We went to the same church. I knew Gwen Klingler pretty well. I knew all of them, and they were friends as well as people who were very helpful to us, Raymond Poe, so that I think, without mentioning names, some of the people in Urbana began to worry, now this is not good. How come she's interacting with these people? And we're not, it's not easy for us, but that's just part of being in a state capital. That's a natural consequence of your location.
No question about that. Yeah, I know know all the people you're talking about. In fact, let's see, Rich Brower is my in-laws state representative.
Oh, how about that?
But, and I'm sorry to see Larry stepping down.
He is. He's been a good senator. Yeah, very good senator.
You mentioned that there were some trials and challenges at this place when you arrived, and quite a bit of upheaval. What was your vision for trying to bring people together? And that's tough.
Well, that was very, very hard. I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to heal the community, because not only we had lawsuits, we had a labor unrest. The faculty was unionized at that time, as you know. It was very, very difficult, and it took some time. I think it was, I forget now exactly how the decision was made, but I decided that I needed to bring everybody together. And there's a group at Harvard who does this. They had helped settle the Nicaraguan war, so I thought it'd be a good group to bring in. And they did come in because they were outsiders, and I asked the Board of Regents to sit in on the discussions, the faculty, the union, the administration, some staff, and we spent 3 or 4 days just sitting together talking about what the issues were, how we were going to come together, how it was a new day for our campus, and I think that was the beginning of you can ask people to trust you, but you have to earn it. And that was the beginning of an opportunity for me to learn to trust them and for them to learn to trust me. And I think out of it came a stronger college.
When did the transition to a four-year institution begin?
That came after we went with the University of Illinois. We started working on that almost right away. And because, of course, the model was a model that had it seemed like a good idea when it was initiated, but almost every state had converted their 2-year schools to 4-year institutions. Illinois and I think Texas were the only 2 left. And so, of course, that was a goal from the day I arrived here.
Refresh my memory. I'm trying to remember how all of this took place, but I remember, and I believe it was 94, 95, along and about there, that Governor Edgar dissolved the Board of Governors and the Board of Regents. And
that's correct.
There was we were in kind of a change from the old system of systems in Illinois, and you had all these, if you will, free agents out there. How did the decision get made to form the allegiance or the links with U of I?
Well, when Governor Edgar decided to reorganize higher education, he had really proposed it earlier, but it had not been possible. It was politically not possible for him at that time. And so then he tried again and asked Bob Custer, who was lieutenant governor, to head the effort. So then the question started about how do we reorganize, who goes with, how do we select board members. We wanted, Custer and Edgar wanted to have individual boards and so forth. And the discussion we had was we were the smallest and perhaps the most vulnerable, with the exception of Governor State, perhaps, and a couple of others. And we were approached. It was very interesting by others. What do you want to do? Bob Custer would talk about it, and I knew immediately that I wanted to go with the University of Illinois. I mean, that was a place to go. I would say that if you looked at the Springfield, 43% of the population either had degrees from from Sangamon State or the University of Illinois. That was our natural home. And of course, I had a degree from the University of Illinois. Bob and I had both gone to Urbana for graduate degrees. So I knew the university. I had been to the campus quite a bit. There was a great deal of leadership in Springfield. We're graduates of the University of Illinois. It was a very, very natural selection, and in many ways it made sense. And for the University of Illinois to have a presence in the state capitol was very, very appealing. So we were popular. Once we decided that we didn't want to stand alone, we were going to become a four-year institution, and we needed. And what seemed most logical for us, the University of Illinois, was a natural partnership.
Just trying to figure out what this would have looked like from the faculty's position, from being somewhat autonomous to moving into something, the flagship land-grant university. Was there any resistance or fear?
Oh, there's always resistance. So, I mean, that's the nature of the beast. Having been a faculty member, I can identify totally with it. Of course, some people objected, but really the objections weren't as strong as I thought they would be, because we had a lot of meetings about it and so forth. What upset them and what really created a problem was when the legislation was brought forth, was written, introduced, the bills were introduced and so forth. It declared us one university in the sense of collective bargaining, which meant that then the union would no longer be representing the faculty. They had hoped that they could keep the union and still be part of the University of Illinois, but the University of Illinois had decided that that simply wasn't going to work. And when the bill was presented very quickly, within hours, and then went through the House in rapid, perhaps record-breaking speed, and they realized that they would no longer have a faculty union. That's when people became upset, and that's when it became a much more larger challenge to try to bring people together to accept it, to work it out, to see what we could do to accommodate the history of Sangamon State, which we're very proud of, and at the same time meet the needs of the university. But that was a difficult time for the faculty and for all of us.
How do you lead a transition like that? I don't know that it's probably in the books anywhere. Your gut's got to go. You've got
very patiently, slowly, with a great deal of help and a great deal of participation from those who are willing to change. It's very hard for us in the academy, I don't care what institution you're in, to accept change. I think it was Seymour Martin Lipset said that is a liberal institution. There's no more liberal institution than university, and more conservative about change when it comes to them. So it took quite a bit of patience, some leadership, a great deal of help from the people at the on-campus administration at the University of Illinois, and we worked with them. We told them, this is not easy. It's not going to be easy, but if we all work together, we can make it happen. Of course, they were very helpful, helped us with resources, helped us with the reorganization, sent some people over here to work with us, and we had a high level of trust, I think, by that time, that we're all, at the long term, we were all interested in this institution. And the people who were at Sangamon State really loved it. They were committed to it, and they did not want to go through another period of stress and havoc like they had had in the past.
What would you say, how would you say this new identity, or how would you describe this new identity as it was forged here in this new sense of, or new presentation, iteration of the university? How did it come together? How would you describe it?
Well, we did it very, in many ways, some symbols rather slowly. We didn't try to change everything overnight. We really looked at the policies of the university and how can we work within them and keep as much of what we've been doing in the past. And of course, the next generation, time takes care of itself. I imagine if you check the records, and I have not looked at it recently, that the majority of the faculty were not here when it was Sangamon State. But there's been a tendency to romanticize it. Someone said to me, well, the university that never was, you know, because we look back on those wonderful days when something goes wrong. But it was done. It was done in subtle ways, you know, changing the. And I'm going to give you a silly example, but one of the things everyone thought, or we thought would be nice, is to have all three of the campuses have the same blue color, and then we would have the white and the orange and the red. And I knew even that was going to be a problem. So what we did was we kept darkening the shade of the sweatshirts and things until finally they were finally navy blue, because they've been more of a blue like yours. And so where possible, we avoided the minor, and others we just confronted. We said, this is going to change. We're sorry, but this is going to change.
What would you say would be the strengths of the new UIS that grew out of Sangamon State and grew with this new partnership and this new relationship with the University of Illinois system? What are its strengths?
Well, I think that just crudely, financially, we had more support and more help. We were always just everything was a budget, was a financial struggle and so forth. By being part of a larger pool, you of course get some resource, a very practical level. It permitted us not only to survive, but to grow. So that, I think, was very important. I believe that we were also able to attract a broader range of faculty who found it more comfortable to be in a four-year institution, part of the University of Illinois system, than a two-year institution, although we did attract some very strong faculty to Sangamon State for reasons we could discuss later. But those would be two of the strengths. We had more to offer students in terms of technology. And one thing that this faculty did, which I think even compared to their banner faculty, was to accommodate to technological change and internet education. They were very flexible. They were leaders. They were willing to accept that, and as a result, we have many, and we have been pioneers in distance education, and we're very proud of that.
Yeah, I remember talking to, I believe it was Ray Schroeder. And
oh yes, he's nationally known.
Yeah, yeah.
He goes to other schools, other universities all over the United States and says, this is how you establish a program that has high standards, that maintains the standards of the traditional classroom. And we're very proud of that. And the University of Illinois came in and actually provided us with labs, computer rooms, things, resources that we simply did not have until they came in. So I believe that we have really served. The primary purpose of an institution ultimately is to serve its students and give them the best education possible. By going with the University of Illinois, we were able to strengthen the education we offered our students, which is what really we care about. That's our top priority.
You also, when you affiliate like that, you have a stronger ability to sell bonds, to build buildings.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Everything we did, we built the dorms. We were in a much stronger financial position.
Was there some pushback from the other universities? Because I remember they're building dorms up there. They're going 4 years.
Oh, exactly, yeah. I was not privy to the discussions that were held when they first talked, when Stan Eikenberry spoke to them about bringing Sangamon State into the system. But my understanding was that you had to promise you wouldn't transfer money, you know, all the things you have to do in order to make it happen. And I think there's still a little bit of sensitivity, but frankly, I just never worried about that very much. We love, you know, UIS, and we love the University of Illinois. We both got our academic starts there, so.
Well, it's interesting because I still hear the old war stories between the Carbondale faculty and the Edwardsville
campus. Oh, same thing.
And now Edwardsville. I mean, we're not going to go there today, at least on record. But it's interesting.
It's just part of the educational, the academic culture and academic life wherever you go.
As you look back on the time here, what do you think was the most significant way that you put your stamp on this institution?
I think ultimately it was going with the University of Illinois. I think that that is because that changed the nature of the school, becoming a four-year institution. I was very lucky because I came at a time when I was able to lead some change, and we changed the entire nature of the institution. So that's hard for me to answer because we were started out as a two-year, continuing community college or master's degree program, and now you look on the campus and it doesn't look the same. You see students, freshmen, and everything changed. And so, and my husband said something very interesting to me when I was thinking about debating whether I wanted to come here or not. And he said, Naomi, you can go to Stanford and you might make a marginal difference. If you go to Sangamon State, you have an opportunity to really make a difference. And I've thought of that since. He was absolutely right. It was absolutely right. You go to an institution like this, when you look back, you say, with the help of a lot of people, you never do anything on your own, I was able to make a difference.
I'll ask it.
Sorry about that. I forgot to shut it off. I was going to do that as I came in. Yeah. But you see what I'm saying? Yeah. There's so we've laughed about that. Stanford never offered me an opportunity to make a marginal change, and they did. Okay, I'm going to shut it off because we have all kinds of calls coming in because I left my number as the call for a big Rotary event, and so I'm probably going to get about 20 calls while we're sitting here. But anyway, that's an interesting question. I think another answer would be that we did strengthen education for the students at this institution in the long term. I think that it's better for students to be in a four-year environment, and I'm proud of our students, but of course I always was. Yeah.
I'm going to go back and ask that one question over a little bit. I got the basic gist of it, but it was an opportunity to come here and make a difference really on a macro scale.
Exactly. Yeah. How many people have that opportunity? Another thing, how many people go to a university or a college and get to meet the founders and talk to them about what their dreams and their aspirations had been, and then see it transform itself into a very different, stronger institution. Not everything is better, of course. There were some wonderful things about Sangamon State, wonderful faculty, closeness to students, but I think that's still going on. And what an opportunity. How many people have that opportunity? I felt and I hate to use the term blessed, for that to have been possible for me. So I'm so pleased that I came here and came to this wonderful community and had so much help and support. I want to emphasize that. I think we can deceive ourselves into thinking that we did great things or did some things, but everybody gets help, as they say, and it's a truism, but it's accurate.
When you look at the shelf life of academic administrators, you don't see many get past the 5-year.
That is, yeah.
You were blessed with 10, right?
10, yeah, and of course I had to come back,
yeah.
So it ended up being 11. So there was a long goodbye when I left, but I went to meetings. I was on the board of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, and presidents would come in and out, and so I was happy that I was one of those who remained because we were happy here.
What's life been like after?
It's been wonderful. I know a lot of people who just have an adjustment to retirement, and of course I've been busy, but I never looked back, and perhaps it was because I was, I did come back once, and then I went to Lincoln Land for a few months when they had a crisis with their with administration and president, who ended up not coming, and I substituted for a few months until I found someone. So, but generally life has been good after retirement.
I think we're about done. I'm just curious, I should have asked this earlier. At the time when you moved into university administration, there was, as you said a little earlier, these places tend to be liberal but very conservative when it comes to change, and women were not always welcome.
That's a whole other interview.
Yeah, I mean,
you have to interview me. I was there for the change. Yeah. That was the big battle, and most of it was at Kansas State University, because the women's movement was started. There was blatant sexism. When I applied for a position, a professor said, well, that's not fair, because that's two incomes from the same family. Her husband already has one salary. I can give you so many examples of what was happening at that time. And Kansas State was never the same after those of us who were there leading the charge insisted on some changes.
I know there's still work to do, because
there's a lot to be done.
I know friends who are faculty, they're not earning what their male colleagues are doing, but things are moving forward because somebody made the first
but it's
move.
Harder. It's more subtle. The discrimination today is more subtle. We didn't have, in political science, you didn't have many women professors. Although I went to, undergraduate major in political science, and because as we moved, I would take courses, 3 other institutions, graduate institutions at one time or another. I never had a woman political science professor in all those years. So almost everything you did, you were the first. The first woman to head a political science department at Kansas State, the first woman academic dean at Georgia State. I was one of my big aspirations was never to be introduced as the first, because it was so common that everybody had done it. Yeah.
Well, I also need to ask about you were the first Hispanic woman to lead a major institution.
Well, that's true, although I have to say that other Latino women have been in education. There was a woman in New Jersey who was president of college, Keene College, which later on became a university after she left and after I had been president. And I knew another Latina woman who was head of the Atlanta Institute of Art. So it was true that I was the first one to go to an institution that was designated a university. There were at least 3 of us. We kind of all knew each other who were doing this. And my sister was one of the pioneer too in community colleges. We were the only 2 siblings to have titles of chancellor. She was chancellor of a community college system when I became chancellor here. So we both led institutions. So we lived, we lived through these interesting times. But in many ways, the gender discrimination was much more difficult.
It's been my experience, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been my experience that women tend to do better in some of these jobs because they're better conveners, and they seem to be better about sharing credit. It just seems to be my experience.
That's a nice generalization that has some truth in it, because we've had to all of our lives. I've worked with some men, of course. I have had so much support and help from. I married well. My husband encouraged me. I worked for an academic vice president at Kansas State, who saw something in me and helped me and made sure I had positions where I was able to develop some strengths and experiences. But I think that you in a family, when we have 4 daughters, and of course you're always moderating, you're always wanting to make sure everyone is treated fairly. I think there's a little bit about that does transfer itself into administration, and we also, I believe, are not as, at least initially, are not as egocentric, because we don't expect to get the credit. I mean, I think this is more typically earlier of when I started than it would be today. I think we developed a lot of the strength and a lot of the weaknesses that happens when the genders come together on a partnership.
As I understand it, you were nominated to come here, but there were family ties to the Springfield area.
Yes, there were. My husband's family, grandparents owned a farm in a little town called Louder. And so when he was growing up, he spent all his summers with his grandparents on the farm, although he grew up in Elmhurst, Illinois. And his mother, who grew up in Louder, it was such a small community that when she went to high school, it was like going to college. She had to move to Springfield and rent a room and stay there. So, and his parents had retired here. So we had come in and out of Springfield. So we knew a little bit about the city. So it was not an unknown community, and we had some sense of what Springfield was like before we arrived.
And I'm going to ask one other question. You said that, well, there are a lot of places, you said your husband said there were a lot of places you could go. You might go to Stanford, you might go
I mean, he said, you know, when you look at positions, he had retired as dean, he had gone tired of administration, and he said, now it's your turn. He said, you've always said you were interested in administration, but head of political science department. You have an opportunity, take it. So that's how we ended up at Georgia State. And when I looked at Sangamon State, I said, you know, it's so different from any institution I've worked in or had anything to do with. It'll be quite a change. And Bob said, but you could go to a great institution or a well-established institution and make a marginal difference. If you go there, there's a possibility that you can leave your stamp, that you can make a real difference, that you'll have a sense of accomplishment when you finish, because you'll know that you did something important in terms of the institution. And I thought that was very insightful because it was absolutely right. Sangamon State and I grew together, and that it was good to be a part of that. It's very rewarding.